start with, we're setting up the stage, so we're going to start with some cable stuff. There's two uses in live sound. It's carrying audio signal from the stage or to the stage is the general idea. So you have direct from instruments, from microphones or electric processing units, and that would include like a DI box. Or coming back, so we're going to monitors or going to the speakers. Here's a bit like a good starting point for everything, and that'll lead into how some of the ways I mix is based off of the idea of signal level. So I was talking about yesterday that 0 dBu, that's at 0 point on consoles. That's sort of the goal. When we're adjusting gain, we're trying to get that signal up to 0. Because after that point, everything in the console is sort of expecting a line level signal. If you give it less than that, it might not, if you're talking about an EQ or an effect, it might not sort of grab it as well because there's less information there. So it's wanting that signal up around that 0 point. So that line level is actually 0.775 volts. There's two versions of line level. If you're talking about CD players, they'd be measured in -10 dBV, so it's about that many volts. And then the Pro mixing consoles, it's +4 dBu compared to that 0 point at 1.23 volts. It's just sort of a standard that they use. So we start all the way at the beginning, mic level, 2.5 millivolts to 25-ish millivolts, and there could be stuff outside of that range. That is nothing. Like, it's super, super tiny. And even with instrument level, it's a bit higher. But these are the reasons that we run from either a microphone or a DI box into a preamp, so we can volt that up to line level. So when you adjust that gain, it's actually a small amplifier, and it's taking in that low-level signal and boosting it. And when you move that knob, you're adjusting how much is being boosted. And then speaker level, that's coming out of your amplifier. So that's when it actually gets to the point of like causing pain or hurt or death type of thing, depending on the level of amplifier you're dealing with. So the XLR cable, the one we deal with the most would be a 3-pin or microphone cable. XLR is actually more of a standard, and so it's this end. And so there's like 2-pin, 3-pin, 4-pin, 5-pin, 6-pin XLR. They all have different uses. The one that you're almost only ever going to see is 3-pin, which is what we use for microphones and everything. You might sometimes run into 5-pin that's used for lighting. That's a DMX standard. But some cheaper lights will use 3-pin because when they built the DMX standard, they added some like room for growth that they've never used. So those 2 extra pins and a 5-pin don't do anything. So cheaper lights will use the cheaper 3-pin connectors, and then you can just use microphone cables, but that can lead to some other problems. But with the mic cable, the big thing is it's a balanced cable. It carries 2 audio signals that are a mirror image of each other, and that's used to remove noise. It carries it at a microphone level, and you can go a long distance with it, about 300 feet. Does anyone know what I mean by balanced audio? Anyone understand when you read that? If you ever read anything about mixers and stuff, it'll say balanced or unbalanced, all that. So, So this gets back into our phase stuff that we were talking about yesterday. And when you have stuff that's 180 degrees out of phase with each other, it'll cancel. So with our balanced audio, we have our like positive pin, then you'll have your negative pin. It's carrying that same thing, just reversed all the way down the cable. And the reason for that is, say we encounter some electrical interference. It's going to go, let's say it's here. What color am I on? Red. So it'll go here and there. When it gets to the mixer, it knows it's balanced, so it's going to take that negative one and flip it. So now we end up with, oops, stupid thing changed the size. So we end up with our version that's the two added together. But you remember we had that interference that was, one was this way and one was this way. This one flipped down, so now they negate each other. So that's why you can run longer distance with that XLR cable. It'll cancel out some of that interference that it picks up, because as it's going down with its opposite signals, you get that interference, and then when it gets to the end, it flips it over, and then the signal adds together, but the interference will cancel out. Yeah. It's generated in whatever. Yeah. 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 So the thing that you're plugged into needs to be something that's like creates balanced audio. Like the plug itself has to be balanced. And so that's generally what it is with a mic cable. That's why there's 3 pins. You have your ground, then there's a positive and a negative contact. And so it'll generate a balanced signal, and then if you're plugging into something that's expecting balanced, it'll flip that and get rid of your interference that it picks up. Make sense? Yep, just constantly. As it comes in, it's just flipping that back over, and it's just canceling out like EMI interference and stuff like that, or RF interference. Because a big long copper cable is an antenna. It's going to pick up any sort of radio type signal, and so this helps cancel that out. Man, I talked too long yesterday. Yeah, you're at that point you're physically damaged. So the problem you can run into is if like the shielding on the inside for each cable starts to sort of break apart, you can then it can make contact with your ground, and then you're just killing that side of the signal. Because there's gonna be physical damage to your cables. The one thing I do as a yearly maintenance thing, I have this is a cable tester. It's from Behringer. It was like $60, $70, something like that. It might be more now. I haven't looked at the price in a while. But you plug the male and female end into this, and it'll tell you how it's connected. And so once a year, I'll grab all my cables, plug them in, you sort of bend them around a little bit and see if you get any shorts or faults, or if there's a cable that isn't connected, like a pin that's not connected. But yeah, every year you'll probably find, if you have a bunch of cables, one of them is going to be bad. And it's better to find it there than, why is this instrument cutting in and out? It's like, well, because the inside, the little wire broke, and now it's sending a little signal to ground all the time.
We used to get a taxi
Yeah.
going by, like this was Calgary.
Yeah.
We had taxis going by, we had that board, and then all of a sudden you'd have the taxi coming.
Yeah. Yeah, and like there's other things that could be that problem. So who here plays like electric guitar? You? There's 2 sort of main style of pickups. I'm sorry if I'm wrong on that, but the main sort of ones you have is single coil and humbuckers. So if you break down the word humbucker, it's designed to buck the hum. And so a single coil pickup is the unbalanced version of the pickup. It's one side of it, and it's just a big sort of magnet. It's picking up that stuff. So it'll pick up radio signals like crazy because it's just a big coil underneath. So a humbucker is 2 single coils, but one has its phase inverted. and then it's flipping it inside its electronics, and it becomes a balanced signal. So you lose a little bit of high end, but you get rid of the hum because the pickup is no longer picking up all that electromagnetic radiation. The other thing with it too is they are low impedance. So it's just less resistance in it. That's one of the reasons it runs in a lower voltage. But it allows you to go about 300, you can go about 300 feet with an XLR without having to worry too much about interference or signal degradation. TS cables. So TS, a couple of us were talking about this last night, is tip sleeve. So that's your tip. That little black line is an insulator, and then that's the sleeve. And so if you open it up, there'll be 2 wires in there. Your ground will be connected to the sleeve, and your signal wire will be connected to the tip. There'll be 2 little prongs that it's soldered to. This will carry instrument, line level, speaker level, depending on the type of cable. It's unbalanced, so you can't run really far without picking up that interference. They suggest like a maximum of 20 feet. It can be shorter, it would be better. And you use this to connect to DI boxes or amps to speakers, that type of thing. The next one is pretty similar, but it's a TRS cable. So it has an extra little black ring. So now you have 3 wires in there. Tip, ring, sleeve. This will allow you to do usually 2 things. One could be balanced audio. So just like your XLR, you can now do balanced audio with a TRS connector, or you can use it for stereo. So the most common use for this would be headphones. Your headphones are in stereo. You have a left and a right. And if you look at the connector for it, it's going to be usually a TRS. If you have like iPhone or phone headphones, it's usually TRRS. There's an extra ring there. That one's for your microphone. But yeah, with a stereo signal, yeah, one will be the left, one will be the right, and then the other part is your ground again. And it's generally used for mic or line level. Network cable. This is the newer stuff we were talking about with the digital stage boxes or personal mixers if you're doing monitors that way. It's made for networking. Whatever protocol it's running in, you have Aviom P16. So Aviom is sort of a, I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with personal mixers with a little box they put in front of the musician. You can adjust the volumes. They can make their own monitor mix. Aviom is a sort of a general brand name. P16 is the one that comes with the Behringer X32. There's the ME1, ME500 that'll go with Allen and Heath. There's a lot of different versions of these boxes. Cat5 is less and less common now. It's more common to see 5E and 6. The next one up is 6A, then there's 7, 7A, 8, 8A. You'll never see those ones right now. But 6A is starting to become more common. It's just as they go up, they can just transmit more data further distances. Yeah, so the CAT stands for category. So it's category 5 cable, and so each one of them is a standard. And what the standard is, it'll max out at 100 meters, so it's like 330 something feet. And for each category you go up, it's just more data over that distance. So your Cat 6 cable can do gig over 300 feet. Cat 6A can do 10 gig over 600 feet. You can go up with that too. But then you're better off getting into like fiber. Then you can do a lot more data over ridiculous distances. All right, cable wrapping. Let me use a shorter one so I don't make a fool out of myself. So, how many of you guys wrap cables like this? Anyone? Okay, good, don't. The problem with that one is you're putting it under a lot of tension when you do this, so that's just bad for the cable in general. But then the other part is, as you create loops, what you're doing is twisting the cable. If I keep going in the same direction here, it's twisting that cable up. So that's, when you get into longer cables, as you pull it out, that's why it's doing that, is you've created a coil. The The better way, the more industry standard way, is called the over-under. I put left hand. That's because I'm left-handed. You can start in your right hand. Doesn't matter. You make a loop one direction. So in this case, going this way. And then the next loop, you go in the opposite direction. So it'll end up like that. And you go back and forth that way. And what that does is you're basically laying the cable flat because you're twisting it this way and then this way. And if you do it right, you can throw it and it won't get any tangles. It takes a bit of practice. When I first started doing it, I found the best way was actually like I grabbed it like with my hand the other way and sort of pulled it in. And then I sort of got into just twisting it. So I twist it away from me and then I twist it towards me. Now, the one problem with this technique is you put your cable away nice like this, and a week later you go to grab it, and it's no longer nice and neat where like one end starts here and one end starts here. It's done this and gone through like here. If you grab this, now throw it, you've pulled it through itself and created knots. Not too bad on a 15-foot cable. When you throw a 100-foot cable, there's quite a few loops. So for every loop you have, you've just created a knot with every single one of them because you pulled it through it. So that's the one thing to be careful with if you do this. It's better for the cable in the long run. This is more important when you get into like video cable, like coax, where it's a lot more of a solid core. It doesn't like bending as much. That'll help it keep from fatiguing from being like twisted up. Uh-oh. There it is. Sorry? Yeah, I use it for literally everything. Extension cords, garden hoses, it makes it so much easier. Christmas tree lights, you know, every year, that stupid mess, and you're pulling it. If you actually over-under it and put it in nicely, it usually just pulls out at the start of Christmas next year. But yeah, it really helps with like long extension cords too, because you get that thing, you're sort of bending it into shape, and then it gets all weird and wonky. If you lay it in nice and like this, then you keep it from getting all those kinks and stuff. So, common problem is bad cable. If you have no sound coming through the sound source and everything else checks out, then try a different cable. If you have a wrong cable, sometimes this one's kind of weird. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But like, if it's expecting a TRS cable and you put a TS cable in it, you're now sending one of those signals to ground, which should still technically work because you have the other one. But sometimes because of that, it's expecting a different spacing. The little contact might be touching both of them, and then you'll get a weird sort of cancellation because it's sending itself through and then canceling it out. So sometimes if you're having a weird issue with like TS, TRS, check the manual, see if it's supposed to be a balanced or unbalanced signal, and then get the right cable for it. Yeah, that was same with this one. Plugged in the wrong place. If you plug it into an input, we're supposed to be an output, you go the wrong way. That generally doesn't work. Seating, it's not in all the way. Again, you're contacting the wrong part of the pin, so you can get some weird buzzing. Hum, this was an interesting one. So, electricians in the house, what does an electrical cable produce around the outside of it? Noise. Yeah, noise, a magnetic field. And if you run your audio cable in line with that, it's just picking that up. And that balanced audio can only get rid of so much. So if you have a bunch of hum, there's a bunch of different reasons for it. But one thing you can check for is, am I running this along a power cable? And if you are, the best way is actually to go 90 degrees. So if you have to cross over a power cable, sort of go wide and then come in, cross it at a 90, and then move on. And what that does is it just puts that noise out of phase with what's in your cable. And then you're dealing with less of that. It's not picking up as much.